The Burning of Sally's Stitch by Róisín Eyres. Dusk had fallen on the little village, and the grungy yellow glow of the flickering street lamps was the only thing illuminating the dirty cobbled street. At the end of the last alley on the left, a little shop was glowing in the night as flames leapt up around its red brick walls. Inside, crystal orbs fell and smashed like giant raindrops onto the worn Persian rug. The walls were aflame as the purple drapery and assortment of hand-carved tribal masks were incinerated. In the centre of the room was an old mahogany table on which a deck of tarot cards had been set aside, the card of the hanging man on top, glaring accusingly at the smoky ceiling. The remains of some incense, still smouldering, lay beside a pile of old books, all waiting patiently for the flames to reach up and obliterate them. Already, countless dusty volumes lay in ashes around the room, their secrets lost forever. In the midst of this chaos, one thing was left untouched. As she sat atop the high shelf in the corner, Sally Stitch watched the shrunken heads swivel slowly on their strings like grotesque puppets, until one broke and plummeted like a stone onto a motionless figure in a chintz armchair below. Sally watched as the armchair gave way and the charred figure within ended up slumped on the floor, the shrunken head catching fire as it rolled from her lap. She watched as the corpse of her maker was engulfed, lit cigarette still in her blackened hand. Madame Ophélie had run her little psychic shop for close to 20 years. In its day, it had been a glittering menagerie of all things ethereal. But in a conservative small town, a psychic was not well received, condemned as being the wife of the devil, and increasingly blamed for all the minor accidents and troubles of the superstitious townfolk. Madame Ophélie seemed doomed to fail, and yet somehow her business survived. Only Sally knew that this was because of the few curious souls to be seen skulking down the alley at night, faces hidden by darkness and shadows. These curious shadows developed into Madame's regulars, who could see past the stifling views of the town to the truth of Madame's most unusual talents. Sally was the first voodoo doll to be enchanted in the shop. The enchantment connected Ophélie's mind to Sally's, but soon Sally couldn't distinguish between her mind and her maker's. When the shop opened and new patients became connected to Sally Stitch, she soon forgot who she had been in the beginning, or if she had been anyone at all. In the end, Sally was used to treat 6 patients, and with each new connection came a new personality intruding on Sally's mind. Every time someone left happy and healed, she was left with another problem that had not been her own before. It was when Sally treated her 3rd patient that she got her new eye. As the shiny black button was sewn into her empty cloth socket, the 3rd's sight was restored. Every ailment left their own scar, until Sally became so covered in stitches and patches that Madame declared her finite. She was put on the top corner shelf to observe the comings and goings of the secretive little shop, but she could still feel the highs and lows, stabs of pain and soaring elation of any of her 7 personalities at any time. Her heart was broken by people she had never met. Guilt racked her for deeds she didn't commit, and she sat for years listening to the different streams of consciousness filter through her straw-stuffed head, trying desperately to capture one that was her own, but she couldn't. Soon after Sally's shelving, Madame Ophélie began to sew. She spent 7 weeks carefully sewing the new doll, and when Madame connected herself to the doll, Sally was surprised to feel a new mind intrude on her own. She felt desperately in her head, trying to isolate this new consciousness and to finally discover who she used to be. But this new mind felt alien and strange. She was called Vermilion because of the colour of her cloth. Soon, Vermilion was connected to her first and only patient, and Sally watched with detached interest as the doll's initial personality was gradually overwhelmed by the dominant humans. Vermilion only had one patient, because one night, Sally's fourth patient was caught coming out of the shop. The village drunkard reported her immediately to the priest. "Father, I saw her coming out of that hell place. She had the mark of the devil on her. Bad business, Father, when one of our own go against us, ain't it? She was all as good for nothing, her and her black cat." The next week in Mass, the priest condemned patient 4 for her dealings with the devil. He warned that no one should have any contact with her, and she was run out of town by her friends, family, and neighbours, as no one dared acknowledge her existence. Soon after, Sally felt a long fall and a short rope, and no more number 4. For the next 10 years, no villager darkened the doorstep of the little psychic shop. Madame Ophélie never explained to the patients how strongly they were connected to the dolls, and that they would remain so forever. As far as she was concerned, she'd done her kindness, offering her services to the stupid people. But Sally wondered, if they had known, would there have been any patients to begin with? For as she watched the shop burn, one more thing lay on that mahogany table, a little red doll lying innocently beside the hangman's card. Sally picked at her stitches, wondering what would happen next. The flames began to lick up around Vermilion's cloth, and screams rent the sleepy air. Sally knew that Vermilion's patient felt her doll's fate. As the little doll was consumed, her patient's skin was blistering and melting, the smell of burning hair and flesh spreading through her house. Perhaps her husband and children awoke and ran to see what was the matter, to find her burning flamelessly before their eyes. So, as Sally Stitch cast her mind back to earlier that evening, the irony of the situation was not lost on her. For little did the priest know, when he set the little shop alight, that he would get exactly what he said he wanted. Because, as the shop burned with the flames of hell, he had condemned his betrayers. The peaceful little village would be torn apart, as upstanding citizens were marked by their sins. And though Sally would burn silently, her stitched mouth holding back the noise, she knew the town would not. There were 5 more to be punished, 5 more grieving families to be shunned, 5 more screaming houses with the burning of Sally Stitch.